This is the Sabbath School lesson for the second quarter, 2021.
Lesson 3 for April 10 to 16, ready for teaching on April 17, All Future Generations, and read today by Dr. Percy Harrold. Friday, April 16. From the Seventh-day Adventist Bible Commentary, Volume 1, page 261, we read, "The rainbow, a natural physical phenomenon, was a fitting symbol of God's promise never to destroy the earth again by a flood. Inasmuch as the climatic conditions of the earth would be completely different after the flood, and rains would in most parts of the world take the place of the former beneficent dew to moisten the soil, something was needed to quiet men's fears each time rain began to fall. The spiritual mind can see in natural phenomena God's revelations of himself, as we read in Romans 1:20. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Thus the rainbow is evidence to the believer that the rain will bring blessing and not universal destruction." End of quote. And that brings us to our two discussion questions for this week. The first starts with a quote from the story of the flood in the Epic of Gilgamesh, translated by N.K. Sanders, the Penguin Group, published in 1972, and from page 108. "In those days the world teemed, the people multiplied, the world bellowed like a wild bull, and the great God was aroused by the clamour. Enlil heard the clamour, and he said to the gods in council, 'The uproar of mankind is intolerable, and sleep is no longer possible by reason of the Babel.' So the gods agreed to exterminate man." Compare this reason for the flood to the reason given in the Bible. 2. Noah did more than warn his generation of God's approaching judgment. The purpose of his warning was to help the people sense their need of salvation. Why are truths of salvation generally unpopular? List and discuss some things that hinder many persons from accepting God's plan for their salvation. For instance, see John 3 and verse 19, "And this is the condemnation, that the light has come into the world, and men loved the darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil." And John 7:47 and 48, "Then the Pharisees answered them, 'Are you also deceived? Have any of the rulers of the Pharisees believed in him?' And John 12, verses 42 and 43, "Nevertheless, even among the rulers, many believed in him, but because of the Pharisees they did not confess him, lest they should be put out of the synagogue. For they loved the praise of men more than the praise of God." And James 4, verse 4, "Adulterers and adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Whoever therefore wants to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God." And so to summarize this week's lesson. In this week's study, we have noted that the covenants God made with Noah are the first to be discussed explicitly in the Bible. They display his gracious interest in the human family and his desire to enter into a saving relationship with them. God reaffirmed his covenant with Noah, and it was Noah's commitment to God that shielded him from the prevailing apostasy and eventually saved him and his family from the devastating judgment of the flood. And from the book The Story of Redemption, page 71, written by Ellen G. White, we read, "This symbol, the rainbow in the clouds, is to confirm the belief of all and establish their confidence in God, for it is a token of divine mercy and goodness to man, that, although God has been provoked to destroy the earth by the flood, yet his mercy still encompasseth the earth." Inside Story. Our mission story this week is titled Made for Mission in Mexico. It's by Andrew McChesney of Adventist Mission. Gustavo Tarracina is not a pastor, but he has a passion for planting churches. Gustavo, a 58-year-old retired customer service representative for a Mexican telecommunications company, praised God when his second church plant, located in La Huasteca, a small community on the outskirts of Villahermosa, Mexico, became a full-fledged church in 10 years. But he wasn't sure what to do next. He and his wife, Maria Hernandez, prayed. "What do you want us to do this coming year?" she prayed. After praying for a few weeks, Gustavo learned from the district pastor about hopes to plant a church in Playas del Rosario, another small community outside the city. He prayed for 3 weeks and agreed to lead the project. But where were they to meet? That problem was solved when a church member offered his house for the Sabbath meetings. He didn't live there, so Gustavo could use the house freely. It wouldn't cost a peso. On the first Sabbath, 2 mothers and 12 children joined Gustavo and his wife for worship. Seeing so many people at the first meeting, he felt that God was blessing the project and he could move forward. He organised a week-long evangelistic series in the house church, and the number of children increased to 20. With so many children, Gustavo decided to conduct a special Sabbath school for children on Sabbath mornings and a worship service for both children and adults in the afternoons. Trouble struck one of the mothers who attended every Sabbath. The owner of the house she rented threatened to evict her and her 5 children. "If you keep going to those meetings, you will have to leave," the owner said. The mother kept going to the meetings, and she was evicted. But she was not discouraged. She found a new house to rent and continued worshipping. At the house church, worshippers prayed and intermittently fasted for the mother's former house owner. During a literature distribution drive, the owner accepted an Adventist magazine and asked for prayer. A few weeks later, she accepted a loaf of sweetbread from a church member and asked for more prayers. Gustavo, meanwhile, organised a second set of evangelistic meetings, this time in an Adventist church located half a mile, just under 1 kilometre away in a neighbouring community. A woman and a boy were baptised at the meetings, becoming the firstfruits of his church plant. The house church had its first 2 members for just 4 months after opening. By faith, we know God will add more members and our small group will grow into a full-fledged church, he said. Thank you for your 13th Sabbath offering 3 years ago that helped expand the Seventh-day Adventist Church's Southeast Hospital in Villahermosa, Mexico. And there's a lovely photograph here of Gustavo with his beautiful smile. This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. It's supported by the Sabbath School Department and Hope Channel Australia and is rebroadcast by Christian Record Services and through podcasts at It Is Written in the United States, Hope Channel Germany, and through Apple iTunes and SoundCloud. Remember, God is always faithful.